Exactly.
Well, indeed. And I mean, I was just reading before we came on here, Dominic Cummings talking about the Conservative Party being at the event horizon, where it's basically going to disappear. But in its wake now, of course, we see Nigel Farage coming up. And I want to ask you a sort of a double-barreled question here, Andrew. Number one, we had a big discussion here about net zero. Net zero is the big issue for the right here. What is net zero doing to Britain, and what does Farage propose to do about it? But more than that, you talk about, just to bounce off what you were saying about the police, it's not just the police, it's the entire Whitehall bureaucracy, it's the permanent secretaries. How would a Nigel Farage, a reform government, assuming he becomes, as the polls say, the next prime minister, get through the change that he is promising against this very huge bureaucratic Mandarin class that has stopped the Tories from doing things and is now basically running the show for Keir Starmer?
That's quite a long question.
It is, thank you.
He likes the long question. Yeah.
My answer probably won't be so long. He won't get anywhere because he won't have the people that will know how to deal with it. They'll tie him in knots. They tied the last Conservative government in knots, and they had some knowledge of how to run a country. Turned out they weren't that good at it, but they had some knowledge of it. Nigel Farage has no knowledge of how to run a country, neither does anybody in his team, so it will be very difficult for him. But that is not really the purpose of reform. The purpose of reform is an insurgency. It isn't really to run the country, though they may end up doing that if the polls are correct at the moment. It's basically the country showing its disgust at the two main centre-right and centre-left parties. They feel the Conservatives, they gave the Conservatives a landslide majority in 2019, and they feel really badly let down by that, including Boris Johnson, who turned out to be a useless Prime Minister, particularly useless at a time of COVID. So they kicked them out, and by an even bigger landslide majority, they brought Labour in, and within 15 months, they've managed to lose all support that they had in the country. They're polling now at about 17%. That's unheard of. And it's basically, we're fed up. It's a pox on both your houses. It's the British people saying, we're not sure that Nigel Farage has all the right answers at all, but we know it really upsets you, Labour and Conservative, if we vote for you. And so if we vote for him, so we're probably going to vote for him. And it's a sign of the crisis in the British two-party system, Labour and Conservative, which have run Britain since the end of the Second World War, one after the other. Margaret Thatcher won her landslides in 83 and 87 with 44% of the vote. Tony Blair won his landslides, two of them, with 44% of the vote. Labour and Conservative between them can't even get 40% of the vote now. Wow. You're seeing the collapse of the mainstream parties in Britain. And you say to people, yeah, but, Reform won't know how to run the country. Nigel Farage is a transformative politician, but he's never run anything. People say, we don't care. We just don't want them running the country anymore. Let's blow it up and see what happens when the pieces come back down. And we say, well, that's a dangerous thing to blow things up. They say, yeah, but it can't be any worse than it is. And just to pick up on your net zero was a consensus of British party politics from the year 2008 onwards. It started under the Blair Labour government, when Ed Miliband was the Energy Secretary. We set the tough targets. The Conservatives continued, and lo and behold, in a fit of virtue signalling in 2017 or 18, it was under Theresa May, they toughened the targets. They made them even tougher to do. The consequences of that has been to give Britain the second most expensive domestic electricity in the world and the most expensive industrial electricity in the world, from which it has followed that our heavy industry is now hollowed out. All the heavy industry is leaving, and so what happens is, to try and keep it going, the government comes in with subsidies to keep it going. So having priced it out of the market on high electricity prices that we pay for, it comes in with our taxpayers' money and subsidises it. So the British people have just said, enough. Nigel Farage's reform has always been against it. The Conservatives have now come out against it, though for 14 years in power they were in favour of it. And even Labour is beginning to think, hey, if the choice is between pouring billions more into net zero, which will make an infinitesimal impact on CO2 emissions, versus defending the country, where we need a lot more money, let's defend the country. You ask me, where will more defence spending come from in Britain and or Australia? It comes from the money you were planning to spend on net zero. What is more important? Making an infinitesimal difference in CO2 emissions, and there are other ways you can cut it anyway without this big investment, moving to gas for one, moving to nuclear will be another. There's all sorts of ways you do it. Or defending the nation, our two nations, all the democratic nations, in an age when the autocrats are on the march. Well, I know what plain people want. They're not stupid. They want the defence of the realm first, before more of Ed Miliband's mad, expensive net. He's a zealot on these matters. And Australia, I have to say, at the risk of being an unkind guest, you're a bit behind the times on this. Net zero is collapsing all over the place. It's gone in America. It's going in Britain. No one in Germany talks about it. No one in France ever talked about it in the first place. No one in Italy cares about it. It's on the way out, because we are in greater danger than at any time since the end of the Cold War. And if there's any spare money around, we should be spending it on the defence of our countries, not on a net zero zealot's expensive dreams.